One of my parents has dementia. What does that mean for me? What you really need to know about early intervention for more brain power. This is a study that looked at cognitive function of unaffected first degree relatives of individuals with late onset Alzheimer's disease. LOAD is late onset Alzheimer's disease, and offload is middle aged offspring of patients with LOAD. They're around 54 years old. Over 99% of cases of Alzheimer's disease are late onset, meaning their initial cognitive symptoms usually appear after 65 years of age. Now, we know that that's a lot earlier now, but that's kind of what they call the LOAD people. Familiar or early onset Alzheimer's disease cases result from a fairly rare autosomal dominant mutation and account for less than 1% of cases. First degree relatives is a person or a person's parent, full sibling, or child. It constitutes a category of family members that largely overlaps with the term nuclear family, but doesn't include the spouse. First degree relatives are related by blood. This is your parents mostly, and maybe your kids. This article is a systematic literature. This article is a systematic literature review and meta-analysis that examines the cognitive functioning asymptomatic, unaffected first degree relatives of individuals with LOAD. We would call these people the offload. And it was recently published in 2022. The first degree relatives of LOAD affected individuals show mild but robust cognitive dysfunction compared to controls without a family history of LOAD. The APOE4 carriership, or the genetics of Alzheimer's, in the first degree relative is associated with more significant cognitive dysfunction compared to people who didn't have this genetic relationship. Age and the 4 allele of the alipoprotein E gene, APOE4, may influence cognitive performance differences between first degree relatives or offload people, offspring of late onset Alzheimer's disease, versus controls. This highlights the importance of considering these factors when modifying cognitive decline affects relatives of LOAD. That could be you. What are we talking about? Cognitive domains with significant differences, language problems, visual spatial and verbal long-term memory. So visual spatial memory and verbal long-term memory, executive functions, short-term memory in the verbal, and verbal IQ. These were the domains that were affected in kids of people with Alzheimer's. The language affected by cognitive decline is a person with semantic dementia may have difficulty understanding the meaning of words or phrases, or they have difficulty putting words together in formed sentences. A person with pragmatic dementia may have difficulty understanding the speaker's intent, or they may have difficulty following social rules or conversations. So this is the language that gets affected in young people. Visual spatial and verbal long-term memory is the ability to remember visual information over a long period of time. This includes things like remembering the layout of a room, the face of a friend, or the way to get to familiar destinations. Verbal long-term memory is the ability to remember verbal information over a long period of time. This includes like remembering the names of people, the lyrics of a song, or the plot of a book. These long-term memory aspects were affected in offspring, asymptomatic offspring of late onset Alzheimer's disease. Executive functions are the cognitive skills that allow us to plan, organize, and control our daily activity, managing time, problem solving, decision making, reasoning, abstract thinking, attention, working memory, impulse control. And the cognitive domains of executive function that were affected could be attention, the ability to focus on a task and ignore distraction, focus. Working memory, the ability to hold information in the mind and manipulate it. Planning and organization, the ability to develop and carry out plans. Problem solving, the ability to identify and solve problems, decision making, the ability to weigh options and make choices, abstract thinking, the ability to think about things in a general way rather than concretely, impulse control, the ability to control one's thoughts, emotions, or behaviors. And these things, aspects, or domains of executive function are diminished in non symptomatic children of people who have load. What's verbal short term memory? This is one that gets a lot of people going. It's the ability to hold a small amount of information in your mind for a short period of time. Difficulty remembering a list of numbers or words after hearing them just once. Problems following instructions that are more than a few steps long. Trouble keeping track of a conversation or story. Inability to learn new information. Restricting in remembering names and faces. So that's problems with verbal short-term memory, things that are spoken to you. So speaking them and learning them, these are all affected. And what is your verbal IQ? This was also affected. It's a measure of a person's ability to understand and use language in four main areas: cognitive ability, perceptual reasoning, working memory, and processing speed. So reading comprehension, verbal fluency, sentence completion, analogies, and vocabulary constitute your verbal IQ. And these are diminished in asymptomatic offspring of people with load. The presence of the APOE4 allele, just one, you don't need two, is a genetic risk factor for late onset Alzheimer's disease, was associated with more significant cognitive dysfunction in first degree relatives. This suggests that APOE4 may play a role in the development of cognitive decline in unaffected first degree relatives of load affected individuals or off load people. That's a big situation. We have definitive evidence that you may not have dementia right now because maybe it's coming, but you will have cognitive decline. And age is this factor. So there's nothing really we can do about aging, and there's nothing really we can do about our genetic makeup. So age is a significant factor for these people. As older offloads or first degree relatives, they show more cognitive function, and this age-related changes in the brain contribute to cognitive decline in these unaffected people. This was the first study that suggested that offload individuals show mild but robust cognitive dysfunction, which is influenced by your certain cognitive domains, cognitive test types, and your genetic Alzheimer's status. These findings highlight the importance of considering these factors for the prevention of your future cognitive decline. And we were going to review this paper in the next series of videos. I hope this is helpful for you to understand the risks that are involved by just having a parent with late onset Alzheimer's disease. What are you going to do about it?